See the
Going live.
Oh, the comments.
yeah, log in.
But I need
You need slides. You can go back and forth. Will you let us know if there's comments? If there's questions? Hand us the iPad if we do.
Hand us the iPad if we do. Hand us the iPad.
Welcome everyone, and thank you, Ed, for turning down the volume on that.
You're welcome.
Today we're going to learn how to crush it with short sales and why short sales can be a very, very profitable segment of your business, especially if you're an investor. So with me today I have Ed Hendrickson, the one and only Ed Hendrickson from the Hard Money Project. He has a ton of lending experience and he'll teach you everything there is to know about financing one of these deals. And myself, I'm Leiva, broker and CEO of Culture Estate, and I've been doing real estate now for over 16 years, and I'll teach you everything there is to know that I know of with short sales and any other questions you guys may have today. So without any further ado, Ed, tell us a little bit about how you've worked with short sales as a lender before we jump into our presentation. Just tell us a little bit about what people should know.
So a lot of the short sales that I've worked with are actually, they end up being LLC buyouts as a lender.
Okay.
So just to briefly explain what that is, somebody gets a short sale under contract and they are purchasing it into an LLC's name or some sort of an entity, and then they are selling that entity off to the buyer, and then the buyer's coming to me to get the hard money loan.
Yeah. That's a little bit of an advanced type of situation. You guys are not going to encounter that too much early on. You're going to most likely be the principal that's going to be buying the short later on, or keeping it as a rental property. But what Ed mentioned is an option for a lot of investors who have purchased short sales. They choose to sometimes not close on them and assign over their contract. But today we're not going to be covering too much of the advanced stuff. We want to walk you through the basics, and we want to walk you through a step-by-step of what a short sale is going to consist of. So our first step is, what is a short sale? A lot of people have heard the term short sale thrown out. Some of you guys obviously know what it is, but some of you guys may not know. So I'm not going to spend too much time on what a short sale is. I'm just going to briefly explain to you what a short sale would consist of. So a short sale also goes by the name of short payoff. That's when a lien holder agrees to accept less than what is owed in order to satisfy a debt. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a mortgage, a real estate mortgage from a bank. It could be a lien that's held by maybe the municipality if they have a fine on the property and there's no other mortgage. It could be held by any other lender, like a credit card or anything else that you might have signed on to that may have attached itself to your property. It could be even, for most cases, you won't get a short payoff on taxes because taxes always run with the property. But in some states where the taxes, where the properties cost less than what the taxes are worth or owed sometimes, you may get a short payoff on taxes as well. In New Jersey, property prices are pretty high, and in the surrounding area, you're probably not going to see too many of those. But whenever there is a debt against the property, it could be short. It could be short paid off or paid off in short if there is no equity in the home. So, Ed, what do you think? Pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah, so what you're doing is you're basically shorting the bank, the money you owe them.
Absolutely, yeah. Whatever it is, it doesn't have to be a bank. It could be any lien holder, as long as there's no equity in the property and it's upside down. So you may hear the terms upside down, underwater. I've literally told, I've spoken to sellers in the past, and I've said, I believe your home may be underwater. And they said to me, no, my home was never affected by Sandy. And I'm like, no, it's not literally underwater like your home is.
Wait, the water's on in the basement?
So sometimes the terminology may throw people off, but underwater and obviously upside down means that there is no room there for the owner to sell their house at a profit. It doesn't mean that the owner can't receive any money from the sale. It just means that they have no viable equity in the property. Okay, next thing I wanted to explain to you guys is who qualifies for a short sale. Believe it or not everybody under the sun is going to qualify for a short sale, and it's not really based upon how much money you make. It's based about how much money you can actually show that you have available. Because what I'm going to explain to you is that I've done short sales for people who are out of work and make zero money, and I've also done short sales for attorneys who make $300,000 a year. You can do short sales for just about anyone under the sun as long as they don't have assets in order to contribute towards the loss of that sale. So for instance, if the home is worth $500,000 and a person owes $1 million on it, there's no way that the person is going to be able to pay for it if they're out of work and have no money in the bank.
Right.
An owner can have equity in another property, the owner can have $300,000 in their retirement account or any other pension and things of that nature, and the bank can't go after it. The reason why the bank can't go after that money is because when you sign on to debt in New Jersey, each state has its own laws, but in most states, you're going to sign to what's called a non-recourse loan. A non-recourse loan means that you will never have to pay anything back to the bank besides the mortgage that you signed on to. So, you have to obviously pay your mortgage, but in the event that you don't, what happens is the bank can only take the collateral that you pledged, and in that case, it would be the property. So they can take the home back from you, but they can't take your other home unless it's a commercial loan. They can't take your pension away from you. That's protected. So if a person has no assets and they're underwater and in terms of equity, they can qualify for a short sale. Ed, do you think our audience may need a clarification on that? Is that pretty straightforward?
That is straightforward, but just so for clarification, for me, what I caught there was, what happens if they're working
And making great money?
and making good money?
Good question. So if someone's working, like my attorney client who was working, definitely wasn't out of work, but his income and expense form showed that he basically just barely made it.
By his own choices, because he bought a Ferrari and has a Rolex and all these payments?
Well, think about it, right? Pretty much a universal law for human beings is the more you make, the more you spend.
Yep.
So whether you make 50 grand a year or 500 grand a year, you're going to find a way to spend just enough of what you make. So my client was no exception. He spent just about what he made. So it's just like a guy who had 30,000 a year and spent 29,500. It was the same principle. So since he was spending just as much as he was making, and we were able to prove that on his mortgage assistance form, the bank accepted it. It took us a while. Obviously, some banks take a long time, but we got it done for him, and he was very grateful. He's obviously given us a lot of referrals since then. But yeah, good question. It doesn't matter exactly what you make either. If you're making 100 grand a year and your expenses show that you're only spending 20 grand a year, the bank's going to say, where were you putting all that extra money? Where's it going? So you got to be very careful with that, because if you have a client that you want them to, or you have a buyer, a seller that'll short sell you their home and they have 100 grand liquid in their bank, they're going to have to contribute to the loss of that sale. The bank's not just going to take it in the chin and say, you keep your 100 grand and we'll take the entire loss. So a couple grand.
Short sales.
Exactly. If they have a couple grand in the bank, maybe they have a couple overdrafts here and there, they're going to see that this person is insolvent. There's no way they can pay this money back.
It's actually really interesting that and a key thing here to think that is, at least myself, you think of a short sale, you think of somebody who is out of work, hasn't paid their mortgage in 2 years, right, on unemployment, whatever the case is, maybe not the best neighborhood. But there are a lot of people who are fairly wealthy and make good money and have just overextended themselves, and they're a good avenue to think about targeting.
Sure,
if you
exactly.
work that angle.
There's a good niche out there that I've been trying to target for years, which is the luxury short sale market. And you can't make any better money, because in luxury, normally the seller doesn't want to pay a full 6% commission. For a real estate agent, this is good information. But if it's a short sale, the bank pays your commission, and banks tend to pay 6%. So if you're selling a home that's $1 million, and you were to take a 3.5% commission or 4% commission, like some of these luxury agents tend to do, because it's a big payday, you could be leaving half of the commission on the table. If it's a short sale, the bank's paying you 60 grand on that deal, and 60 grand, imagine if you sold that thing yourself. Who needs to buy the property to flip it at that point? You're making a good take home just by working on a short sale. So there's a lot of money involved in these things if you get it right. But I also wanted to mention to you guys, if you guys have questions about anything that we're saying, or comments, or maybe anything that you want to add to what our conversation is today, just go ahead and send in the question, write it in the box that you see down below, and we'll answer your question as soon as we break in between slides. So the person that's going to qualify for your short sale is a borrower who has experienced a hardship and can no longer continue to make payments. If there is no hardship, they're probably going to tell you that your short sale is going to be declined. So it could be a financial hardship, it could be a medical hardship, it could be a divorce. It could be a lot of things. It could be a disability. It could be a lot of things that could happen to an individual. They could cause them to lose the property. I've had homeowners who have bought 2-family homes, and their tenants stopped paying rent, and then they couldn't afford the mortgage anymore, and that's a viable excuse. Okay. It's a financial hardship. So they got laid off. This happened to just about everybody during the market downturn. There was a lot of people who said they got their hours cut, they were laid off, they were self-employed, and there was no business for them. So all these things qualify. So as long as the financial hardship or the medical hardship or the life hardship is basically verifiable with financial income, obviously it's very easily verifiable. You can show your bank statements or you can show your tax returns. But if you say that, you know, my mom passed away and I had to, you know, take care of all the medical expenses, I had to take care of all the burial costs and all those things, be prepared that they might ask you for a death certificate. You know, so don't make up something that is not valid. Always go for the valid excuse. And if someone just stopped making payments because they didn't want to keep making payments on that home because they just felt like, you know what, I'm tired of this house, you may get declined for that short sale. You need a valid excuse, or not excuse, but a valid reason. Makes sense, right?
Yeah, I was thinking that as you said that, you probably don't want to lie.
No, you don't.
On these things by making something up, such as someone
Absolutely.
passed away.
No,
There's
you
probably
can't.
Huge ramifications to that.
I mean, the biggest ramification is going to be that they're going to say
Fraud.
no, you know, and they're going to decline you from ever trying again. Back in, I would say maybe 5 to 10 years ago, it was pretty prevalent for people to do what was called a strategic short sale, because at that point, a lot of homes were still not recovering from the crash. So people figured out that they could stop making mortgage payments on their home and live there, sometimes up to 10 years. I've heard of people living in their homes while making mortgage payments, and make more by not making their payments than they would have if they would have sold it. So picture this. Let's just say they were going to sell their home, and their net proceeds would have been 20 grand, right? 20 grand is still some money. But what they figured is that, like, if I stop making my payments, my friends down the block haven't made payments in 5 years. If I don't make payments for 5 years, I'll save myself 100 grand.
Right.
So that's what was called a strategic foreclosure or a strategic short sale. They would basically let it go as long as possible and then sell it at the last minute as a short sale. Now what happens sometimes is that if a bank catches on that you did a strategic short sale, they're going to decline you too. So it really has to be for someone that is...
Well, that's what I was thinking is they now have 100 grand in cash theoretically.
Yeah, stashed somewhere else probably.
Right, because you strategically have to be
Yeah,
smart
they
with that
strategically
100
moved it
grand.
somewhere else. So yeah, it is a pretty fine line there, and you got to be careful with who you work with, because it could be a waste of time for you as well. You know, you don't want to be spinning your wheels for 3 to
You
6
just hurt
months with
yourself.
someone. Yeah.
He's going to be making mortgage payments now.
Yeah, well, don't ever tell someone to stop making a mortgage payments, first of all, guys. This is rule number 1. If you're going to go after short sales, don't take a person who is current on their mortgage, don't ever tell them to stop making payments on their loan. Because if you do and that thing goes upside down on you or turns ugly, they're going to come after you, whether you're an investor, especially if you're a real estate agent, or if you're any kind of person that holds any type of license, they can come after you, because, you know, you should never tell anyone to stop making your payments. The banks already do that. The banks tell their borrowers all the time, oh, you want a modification? Stop making your payments. You want a short sale? Well, you're current on your loan. We can't help you unless you stop making your payments. So refer them back to the bank. Let the bank tell them that. Let their attorney tell them that. But never, ever tell them to stop making payments on their mortgage.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't want to guide anybody wrong.
So what happens to the loss, Ed, if the bank is taking a $100,000 loss? What happens to that money? Does it just magically disappear into thin air?
As far as I understand, no, it does not. So the lender will provide a 1099. For those that don't know what a 1099 is, it is an income document. So as a real estate agent, if you make $10,000 on a commission, you'll get issued a 1099 at the end of the year, and then you'll have to submit that to the government and pay your taxes that way. That's how they keep track of it. So basically, you're going to get a 1099 for the loss. So it's going to show up as income on your taxes. So you will now have to pay taxes on that sum. So if you have your short sale, the loss is $50,000, you're going to get a 1099 for $50,000, and now your income that year has just increased $50,000.
Yes, correct. Now, there are ways around that. So certain borrowers, the majority of borrowers or the majority of sellers, are not going to have to pay that money because there is a statute that the IRS has put for people who have actually purchased homes that they considered primary residences. Also, for people who are insolvent, this also they fit this criteria. So what happens is, yes, the lender does forgive the debt, but the lender also has to write that debt off, so as a loss. So whenever somebody loses, another person gains. So that's why they're issuing you the 1099, like you mentioned, which is correct, 100% correct. So if the person happened to have lived in the home and the loss was up to $1 million, they can write that. They don't have to pay any tax on that 1099 earned income through the Home Foreclosure and Debt Cancellation Act that the IRS introduced a long time ago. It's still updated up to this year. So what that basically states is if you're insolvent, if you lived in a home, if the loss was under $1 million, you will be forgiven, not forgiven, but you can put that 1099 into your tax returns, but the ramifications of that tax is most likely going to be nullified. It's going to be zero. I've seen some people pay a couple $100s, never anything more than that, unless the property was a investment property and you're completely solvent. You may have some tax issues there. So you have to make sure that before you do a short sale, if you're watching this and you're contemplating doing a short sale in your home, make sure that you speak to your accountant. No, I take that back. Make sure you speak to your CPA or a CPA. Right. An accountant usually doesn't know any of this stuff. Yeah, don't go to H&R Block. You need to talk to a CPA who knows what they're doing, and not only any CPA, a CPA who specializes in real estate. Because there are CPAs that specialize in different things. If you guys need any recommendations, we have a really reliable CPA that we used here. We can give you that information. If you guys like, please leave us a message and we'll give you his info after the seminar today. Okay.
So it looks like we have a question before we move on to the next slide here. So what's the longest a short sale can last?
Oof. That's the magic question. So I've had short sales that have taken 2 weeks, and I have short sales that have taken 2 to 3 years. So everything in between. There is nowadays banks are better because they cleared out a lot of stuff out their pipeline. Back in the day, they used to take a long time, especially if they were Bank of America. Man, you better just get ready for a long ride. If it was an FHA, Bank of America, it's definitely anyone's guess. Nowadays, most short sales are going to fall under Wells Fargo, SPS, like some of these servicers, and they tend to take as long as the seller takes to deliver their paperwork. If the seller is very, very helpful and provides all their documentation on time, it'll probably take you 2 to 3 months. But if the seller is very kind of like lazy and not cooperative at times, and they give you docs too late, every time that you go past a deadline, they make you start over. So you may have to start your short sale over 2 or 3 times if the seller is not cooperating, and that's what makes the process take so long sometimes. And then sometimes you have banks that are just terrible. Oh, we lost your paperwork. You guys send it in again. Oh, we don't receive documents through email. You have to fax them. 3 days later, 3 days later. Oh, we can't find them. Can you just mail them? And then like this, it's nonsense. But it normally will not take more than 3 to 6 months. That's usually the timeline in which a short sale will start to finish. But like I said, it could be as far as 2 or 3 years if you have that much time nowadays, because properties tend to foreclose a lot quicker than they used to.
And then on top of that, why do well-known banks give you a harder time than the non-well-known banks? So you had mentioned, Bank of America here, forget about it.
They were the worst.
So why someone who's such a brand name street, I guess what they're asking, just a brand name, everybody knows them, shouldn't they be quicker, right? They're more efficient?
Yeah, you would think they would have more staff to help, but at the same time, since they're so well known, they also have a lot of loans. And you got to remember, Bank of America took over all of Countrywide's bad loans. Right. Bank of America was one of the biggest servicers in the country, so they had a lot of stuff on their plate. Plus, they had all types of litigation against them, so they really had to make sure that they weren't doing anything wrong to the 9th degree. So they were probably going through too many steps. I remember getting calls all the time from Bank of America short sale reps, and they would just ask for things I've never heard of before in my life. And it's just because I know they're probably just trying to safeguard themselves against any more legal action. So the only thing I could think of is that the bigger the bank is, the more they have to lose and the more shareholders they have to protect. So I feel like they put more things and stops in place in order for them not to suffer any more losses. But when it comes to the small servicers, I feel like sometimes smaller and leaner is meaner, because they just have maybe a less of a workload and they have a better process. And who knows, maybe they're not worried about as much things because they haven't gone through maybe some bad circumstances. But I can't tell you why. I wish I knew. I wish you could say, like, Bank of America came out with this app where you could do a short sale on your phone and be done in 30 days. Like, that would be awesome. And they have the ability to do it, but they don't.
And then real quick, we got another question. Are we going to be covering buying short sales? And I believe we are. We are going to go over the process.
Absolutely, yeah. We're getting there, guys. But I just want to start from the very basics because some people don't even know what a short sale is, consists of, or anything like that. Okay, so the next question, the next slide is, are short sales good deals? Right, so short sales can be tremendous deals, but they can also be average deals or sometimes pretty bad deals. So you really have to play it by ear. So first things first, the pros of buying a short sale. The first pro would be that you're one-on-one negotiations with the bank. I don't know how many of you guys that are watching have ever been to a sheriff sale or have tried to get a property on the MLS, through a bidding war or an REO on the MLS or auction.com. It's a complete nightmare, and you'll overbid a lot of times just to get a property. The good thing about landing yourself a short sale is that even after you get your offer accepted, you can still negotiate with the bank. There's certain things that you can negotiate on, even though it's an as-is sale and it's sold subject to bank approval. There's certain things that you can still negotiate. So I like it because a lot of times, if I find out that a home is a short sale and it might be listed a little bit higher than most investors will look at, I'll talk to the agent and I'll say, listen, I understand, it's a short sale. Would you mind if I just submitted an offer to see what the bank wants? And if the bank wants more than I'm willing to pay, then obviously at least what the bank wants at that point. I'll back out, you sell it to anyone you want. But if the bank takes something close to what I offer, then we can get the property sold. So that's why I kind of like short sales a little bit better than any other type of deal out there. I tell people that short sales are like your grand slams once in a while, because you might put offers on 10 short sales and one or two of them might have tremendous upside, but it's a lot harder to get upside anywhere else. I feel like, anywhere where there's competition, you're going to be paying through the nose.
Well, it goes to the next point here that we have, that you were saying one-on-one negotiations versus an auction.com or maybe a sheriff sale, is technically when you're buying from a sheriff sale or at auction.com, you don't have access to these properties. With the short sale, you can get in.
Yeah, absolutely. You can get in, so you can see what's wrong with the place. You can get in. You can check for tanks. For you guys who are watching that are not from New Jersey, New Jersey has a lot of oil tanks, underground oil tanks, and that's something that most states don't see, but it can cost you tens of thousands of dollars. So it could be pretty expensive to have to deal with a tank. So yeah, it gives you the ability to see the home, get some scope of work done, and all those types of things. So I like it because of that fact. You're not completely blind, even though we've taught and we've done classes on how to buy sheriff sales without that much of a risk. There's still a risk, But with short sales, I feel like you kind of know everything.
It's almost the least risky.
It's the least risky deal. I believe it is.
So you can have the most upside with the least risk at the same time.
Yep. Okay. The other thing I want to talk to you guys about is that if you get to inspect the home, then you can also dispute the value. So disputing the value is very important, because let's just say that you made an offer on a home for $300,000, and while inspecting the home, you found out that there was a leaking oil tank. Now you can dispute with the bank and say, listen, there's a leaking oil tank. I'm willing to still take it, but I have an estimate here for $30,000 cleanup. The bank at that point will start to do their numbers and say, well, if they're going to have to pay 30 grand, maybe we'll negotiate with them and we'll bring the price down. So I like it because of that. You're kind of always kind of protected in a way. Also, if you make an offer of 300 grand and they come back and say they want 400, and you might think to yourself, these people are completely out of their mind. That appraiser who valued this home is nuts. What do I do about this now? What you can do is you can go in there and create a contractor's estimate, provide better comps than the appraiser used. You can get a letter of value from the realtor saying that, look, I feel like this home is probably incorrectly priced because of these factors. I've given the bank also external factors. I've even thrown into my external factors things such as, home being close to high tension wires, home being
distance from schools, maybe.
Yeah, distance from schools, high crime area. I've used also sex offenders, too many sex offenders in the area, and I've used all this thing, packaged it up, and sent it in as a dispute. One time, I even shaved off, I think it was like $30,000. I shaved off like 30 grand on a property because I got an engineer to come out and tell me about the structural damage the home had in the basement, in which it did. And maybe it wouldn't cost 30 grand, especially if you get the work done with one of your contractors, but I was able to bring that price down. So that's what I love about short sales. And, a lot of people who have been doing this with me for a long time, kind of sometimes they get blown away by how much we're able to negotiate after the fact, which is really important. Yeah, it's big. The other thing, too, that we tend to lose sight on is that short sales really help the homeowner. They really do help the homeowner, because think of it this way. If the homeowner doesn't sell their home as a short sale to you, they're eventually going to foreclose on the home, right? that foreclosure is going to be a really ugly stain on their credit report for a long time, as opposed to having a short sale done. A short sale is going to appear on their credit as something that was paid for less than full amount. So first of all, it looks a lot better.
Yep.
It's a responsible thing. If an underwriter looks at that person 2 years from now, 3 years from now for a mortgage, they're going to say, well, the person did a short sale, did the right thing. If it was a straight up foreclosure, they're like, the person had all this opportunity to do something and they never did anything on this home. So it looks a lot better. Not only that, but a lot of times you can get the homeowner money to move out, relocation assistance. So you can give them money, you can get them money from the bank up to $10,000. I've seen even $14,000. Some people I know have even gotten them $30,000. And that's, I think that was a lottery at one point where sellers were getting a lot of money for moving expenses. But you can get the tenant's moving expense money, you can get the homeowner moving expense money. So it really does help them, because God forbid they foreclose and then someone knocks on the door and says, you got to go. You know, not all the time will that person be so nice to offer the money to move. You know, so I feel like it's a really responsible thing to do for a homeowner. It helps them, you know, it gives them peace of mind, especially if they have children. A lot of the people that I've helped have had children, and they're nervous wreck because they feel like at any point they can get kicked out. Yeah. You know, so it's kind of what I call it is a controlled descent. You know, we know you're going to lose it, but let's time the process instead of you know, having to, you know, move abruptly from one day to the next. I like that. So next thing we want to talk about now is the cons. All right, so why are short sales sometimes not great deals? Why could they be bad deals? Ed, talk about the waiting game, right? Like, these things could take a time. I mean, can you build a business around just short sales?
No, I mean, you can't. It's the same thing with anything, though, right? You can't really, it's very hard to build a business with one product or one focus. But no, it's probably not a good idea to start a business with just short sales, because short sales can take a lot longer.
Yes.
Again, like you said, due to the bank, maybe some paperwork. But that's also a misconception at the same time, is that they do take
extremely long. Yeah, but they could.
But they can. So that is definitely a con to think about.
So I call short sales, if you think sometimes like a lopsided wheel, like sometimes it goes smoothly, but then sometimes you have that big bump, you know? Yeah, and it's like missing a part. So that's what short sales are like, because you don't always have a predictable outcome. You don't really have what's called a business model that could be replicated, because in order to have a consistent business model, you need consistent assets. You need consistent inventory is what you need. So with short sales, you can make 100 offers, and 100 offers, maybe 20 of them end up being good, you know, maybe a 20% hit rate. So you really got to cast a wide net. So we'll talk about how to do that later on. But for those of you guys who are beginning short sales, you may not like them at first, because the first few that you make offers on may turn out to be nothing. It may end up going to a sheriff's sale. It may not end up being the numbers you like. So you're going to have to try to go as wide as you can, even if it's early on. Don't be scared. Go for as many as possible. You don't have to accept it if it doesn't get approved for the number that you have your mind on. You know, you definitely want to make sure you protect your equity when you're making offers on these short sales. Next, you got to remember that it is still an as-is sale. So what that means is that whatever you find with that home later on, if you buy it and there's issues, you did your home inspection and something else comes back, you can't go back later and say, oh, you never disclosed that the furnace wasn't working to me. You know, you didn't, you know, there was termites, and, you know, like, there's nobody that you can cry to later. You're buying that home as is. Even when you do a home inspection, even when you do something that's a material latent fact, like, for instance, if you go to the home and there's a huge hole in the roof, right, and you make an offer, and then you try to negotiate with the bank and say, look, there's a huge hole in the roof, I want a discount. No, you saw there was a hole in the roof when you made your offer. It's only for things that the eye can't see that you can negotiate with the bank later on, okay?
So more of that mold, oil, stuff like that.
Stuff like that, stuff that comes back. Maybe if you have like a very high, what's that called, that gas, radon gas in your basement, things that you can't see, you know, ghosts or something, you know, like, you gotta call an exterminator. But whatever it is that you can't see, you can negotiate. What you can see, you can't go back and negotiate. It's an as-is sale. So keep that in mind. Don't think you can go in there on a rundown house, make full price offer or above asking offer, and then negotiate things that weren't there. Like, there's no kitchen. You go back saying there's no kitchen. No, there was no kitchen when you saw the home. So just make sure you understand it is an as-is sale. Next is that there sometimes isn't that much seller cooperation. I can't tell you how many times I've had deals where the seller started off very hot and then completely cooled off and didn't want to sell because they realized that, hey, if I just keep renting the home, I can make more money renting than I will by selling it. but that kind of kicks in later, and sometimes the seller just says, you know what, I don't have anywhere to go, so I'm just going to stop answering my phone so I can just extend my time. And this happens a lot. So it gets frustrating when you do this and you're busting your butt and you're on the phone with the bank for hours and the seller answers one out of every 3 phone calls. And then by the time you go to closing, they don't show up. They're nowhere to be found. I'm sure people have stories out there where the sellers go MIA. It's a very frustrating thing because up to the day of the closing, the seller still has to be in the mix.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely very difficult to try to stay in touch with these guys. But that's also, part of that benefit, though, like you said, right? So all these cons kind of have this trade-off. There's a little bit of a theme here to me. There's obviously tougher sellers. There's a reason, though, why they're short selling. Probably being a tougher seller is going to be impacted by they haven't been making their bills. Maybe they've lost their job. They lost their job maybe in part because they weren't showing up on time, lazy, whatever the case is.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. So last thing, obviously, that we need to, well, not the last thing, but the last point that we have is the timing, right? Because short sales are all about timing. You could be working on a short sale for 2 years, and then all of a sudden, right before you're ready to close, you can get, or the seller can get a letter, or you can get a notification that the property is scheduled to go to sheriff's sale. A short sale will not stop the foreclosure process. A modification will not stop the foreclosure process. The foreclosure process runs parallel to any efforts that you guys are trying to make. So keep in mind, you're always against the clock. I know people who specifically go after properties that have just been marked as sheriff's sale because you still have a couple months before it forecloses, but those people sometimes tend to be the most willing to do something because they've gotten their final notice. They've gotten the notification in the paper that their home is going to sheriff's sale. Those people are sometimes like, all right, let's do it now. Like it's kind of late at that point, but sometimes it works. So timing, guys, timing is everything. With short sales, if you end up waiting too long, dragging your feet, or acting too late, you could find yourself losing that property to someone at sheriff's sale. But if you watch one of our other previous videos and you learn how to do sheriff sales, you can then go to that sheriff sale a little bit ahead of the game because you'll know everything about that home as opposed to everyone else. You'll know everything there is to know about that home, and you might have an advantage at that point. You might be a little bit upset when you have to pay more than what you were going to pay for it on a short sale, but hey, that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes.
Exactly.
All right, what do we have next? Do we have any questions, Ed?
Yes, we do. So the question we have is, would the bank ever ask for a ridiculous amount, possibly higher than what it's worth?
Yes.
So you have seen situations where
they're
just being unreasonable.
Being very unreasonable sometimes. I always tell agents and I tell investors the most important part of the entire short sale process is you showing up and talking to the appraiser or the BPO agent. You have to show up with comps, you have to show up with your contract, you have to show up with as much information as possible. Now, keep in mind, you cannot sway the appraiser, you cannot sway the BPO agent, you can only give him factual information. You can't go to the BPO agent or the appraiser and say, hey, John, here's $100, man. Go get yourself something to eat. Take care of me, man. I really need this house to be, $200,000. If you hook me up, man, I'll send you and your wife to dinner. Or what? You can't do that. It's literally called bribery and it's fraud. You can't do that. But you can give John, John, listen, I'm trying to make your job a little bit easier. I did some of the comp search for you. Maybe some of these will work for you. By the way, here's the contract. I don't know if you need it. Because what you're doing at that point is you're just letting him know, this is what we have on the table. If you could help, great. If you can't, I understand.
He's planting a little seed in his mind. So when he goes to look at the comps, he's like, this house is only for sale for $200. Why am I pulling 300 comps? Yeah. Doesn't make sense.
Absolutely. It'll help. It won't guarantee. Look, nothing in life is 100% guaranteed. But, you show up, good attitude, bring them, a cup of coffee or something if it's early in the morning. Just give them, a folder nicely put together, everything organized. You have a better chance. Try to make good connection with the guy. And if he says to you something like, how much you guys need on this deal? Hey, man, listen, how as close as you can get to that contract price would be great, man. But I know it's, you do what you got to do. You know this better than I do. You kind of want to make sure that, you build that rapport with that appraiser or that BPO agent. Yes, I have seen appraisals come back extremely high, and I have seen values come back ridiculously high. And that's when you have to dispute it. Like we had one that we recently had to try to dispute it. I went as far as paying for another appraisal out of my pocket to try to dispute the original offer. it didn't work for me. Sometimes banks aren't really that open to disputing. So in this particular case, it didn't work out in my favor. But you got to try, you know. And yeah, sometimes they come out with too much stuff. The home was a complete wreck, no kitchen in there. It was in town too, in a flood zone, and they wanted a lot of money for it. So I just let it go. Luckily, we were able to give that property to an owner-occupant now. So you know, someone's gonna pick it up, at least from the office.
Yeah.
So that's good. Yeah. Any other questions there?
What about Marshall Street?
Marshall Street was a property. A quick story on that. So Marshall Street was a very good property that I chased for about 3 years. Bank of America short sale FHA, really, really tough one. Chased it for about 3 years, and I carried it with me through like 3 brokerages. It was such a, the lady was already kind of like laughing at me that I was still trying, but I kept trying. The seller,
Yeah.
just laughing, I kept trying. And she was cooperative though, very cooperative, very nice girl. We had to do everything under the sun for that deal, but what ended up happening was that it took so long that it went to sheriff's sale. I was gonna get it for like 70 grand. It was crazy. A 2-family house in Port Elizabeth, by the water, crazy, unbelievable. Whatever happened, the bank decided to take it to sheriff's sale instead. It went for $700,000 at the sheriff's sale. Full upset, full everything. So no, the bank didn't want $700,000 from me. They would have probably ended up taking 70 if we would have finally got everything processed. But sometimes banks are just, I don't know. I don't know if they do it for insurance purposes, because you know banks have mortgage insurance covers them for any losses. So I don't know why they do some things sometimes, but it was a great house. I missed out on it. But yeah, there's sometimes properties that don't get priced correctly. They get priced higher than what they need to be. And you gotta learn when is okay to walk away from deals. You know, sometimes at the moment you think it's expensive, and then you look back a year later and like, damn, I should have bought it. Because the market sometimes is appreciating so fast that you got to be forward thinking sometimes, but you got to kind of like read the market and see where the market's going. So yeah, but sometimes it's okay to say no, guys. And yeah, there are properties that are bad deals at certain prices.
So they say hindsight's 20/20.
Absolutely. Anything else? Any question?
That's it for right this second here.
Okay, how can you find short sales? All right, now we're getting into the good stuff. So how can you find short sales? First of all, you can find short sales very easily in any state in your county clerk's office. They're categorized under list pendants. List pendants, for you guys who don't know how to spell it as L-I-S, you know, not list or anything, or pendant. Huh?
Or LES. Lens pendants.
So
I think I've seen that.
yeah, when we edit this webinar, we'll put the proper spelling of list pendants. So what it is basically that's the formal complaint that the bank has launched. It's a lawsuit the bank has launched in order to get the property back from you. It's the early stages. So once that's filed, it's probably about 2 or 3 months in after you haven't made any mortgage payments. That's public notice. So there are a lot of aggregate sites. Each state's going to have a different aggregate site where you can get that information. You may have to pay for it on a monthly basis. It might be a subscription, or it might be a one-time list that you have to pay for, or you can get it for free from your county clerk's office. But I'm not sure how your county is going to be operating, whether your county has that information available online, or whether you're going to have to go there in person, request a list, or request to look at a book, whatever the case may be. And I heard that New York is kind of funky with that too. Like, it depends where you are. You can get the information from there. Once you have that information, then you can start to target these people. And we'll talk about how to target them, most efficient ways of targeting them. So that's the first way you can get your hands on some short sales. The next way is that a lot of times you may drive down the street and you've always noticed that there's this abandoned house that you've seen for years. Chances are that home is probably underwater. Chances are that home probably has a lot of fines and liens and things of that nature. Get yourself a good searching engine to find people. If you can find people, we use different sites. Obviously, you can use People Finder. You can use talk to neighbors. Sometimes the neighbors are the best source. Sometimes the neighbors might even be the owners. You never know. So abandoned homes, it could be a good way for you guys to get your hands on some short sales. Now, I'll give you guys another quick tip: is that there's lists that you can buy for vacant homes. And if they're vacant, a lot of times they're upside down. They owe more than what's worth. So get your hands on some vacant list homes, and then you can go through a short sale process with them. If they're upside down or whatever the case may be. Sometimes they don't have a mortgage. Sometimes who cares, So either way, you'll find yourself a deal. And then the other way is obviously going to the sheriff's sale website. So some of you might say, well, I don't want to buy it in a sheriff's sale. I completely understand that. But like I mentioned to Ed earlier, that the most motivated short sale sellers are going to be people who have gotten notice that their home is going up to auction. So if you can find that data in your county under the sheriff's sale site, I believe pretty much every state in the country probably has a in their county that have a sheriff's sale site. If not, you may have to visit it in person, but you're going to find out what properties are scheduled. And what I would suggest to you is that you contact the people who have at least 2 months, if not 3 months or more, with time before it forecloses, so you can have enough time to process your short sale. Because banks are going to want at least 37 days in order to review your file. So make sure you keep that in mind. You need ample time. So those are just 3 quick ways and you can get your hands on short sales. I'm sure there's a lot of creative ways and you can muster up some short sales, but these are the easiest ones, and you don't really need to reinvent the wheel. It's worked for me for almost 2 decades now, so it could work for you guys as well. Now, how do you reach those people once you've gotten the information? So Ed, all right, now I have a list of 1,000 properties in my county that are going to foreclosure. I have the owner's names and I have the owner's address. What do I do with that, right? I'm gonna door knock 1,000 houses.
Well, you could.
Right, you could. You definitely could. Unfortunately, they're not all on the same block, so you may have to drive a bit.
So, well, the easiest thing to do, but maybe the most expensive thing to do, is to send some mailers.
Okay.
So
mailings work.
You can send mailings out. There's either you can write an individual mailing list, you know, an individual mailing letter. So say, you know, maybe, hi, I'm Ed Hendrickson. I'm an investor in the area. I'm looking to purchase your property. You know, something a little personal to that. You can then also go with, and you can tell us what's worked best for you, but you can send a lot of times you get, like, we've sold a recent home in your area, or call to find out how much your home is worth, something like that. But I think mailings is the easiest way to do it, especially for somebody who is potentially working at a full-time job. Just send out some mailers. Absolutely.
So I recently just came back from the Inman Connect. If you guys who don't know what that is, it's a conference for the biggest real estate publication in the world, and a lot of vendors and new startups go there. So one of the companies that was there is a company by the name of Addressable. So guys, if you pay attention to this, it's probably going to help you big time. Addressable. So what they do is they'll take your list of people and they will send them a letter for you. The beauty of it is that they have a robot that actually writes it out in pen, like if it was really scripted out by you. Yeah, it's not a stamp, it's not a Xerox copy, it's an actual robot that writes the letters. Now,
can they write in messy handwriting for you?
Yes, they can write. You can pick their handwriting.
Really?
So it's really cool. Yeah, you can pick the handwriting. You can make it cursive, you can make it sloppy guy handwriting, you can do whatever you want. But it's a little more expensive. But I'll be honest with you, mailings have about a 2 to 3% turn rate, you know, so it's pretty low. But they've calculated that they have about 10 to 30% on their mailings because it's handwritten, and it's always been known that handwritten notes get more opened and get responses than stuff that's printed out. It doesn't look personable. So if you guys are going to do mailings, I would say try that out. You don't have to go on such a large scale. Maybe start off with a few hundred. If it works, then you can scale it. You can send out more. But I think that would go a long way for you guys if you just added a little bit of a personal touch. So that's one way, mailings. That's, like you said, is going to be the most expensive way to do it. Next we have is phone calls. Ed, so tell me about phone calls. I know you do a lot of this.
So cold calling is kind of the term that everybody goes by for this. What you would do here is you just put the list together so you know your addresses. Like Lewis said, that there's many different ways to get phone numbers. You can go on their sites, you can buy numbers. If your office has access maybe to a LexisNexis account, you can do that. Or honestly, I have gotten some value personally from just going to white pages. A little bit more tedious, one at a time. So white pages is free, but it'll only give you one number if it's available. Sometimes the number is blocked, but it tells you that, who's their relatives are. So now you try to search and try to find a relative. I would recommend doing a little bit more tedious stuff like that if you've already seen the home and you love that home and this is something you really need. It's obviously going to be a huge time suck to try to find those numbers manually, but the next level easiest is the phone call. You put your list together, maybe you put it in a dialer, or even calling one by one is going to be a lot quicker than going and door knocking.
Yeah, of course.
Houses. Especially
Especially in the winter, guys. I don't know how cold it gets in your states, but here it's a really miserable time to be out door knocking in the winter. So definitely get used to making phone calls. Now you can make a lot of money with phone calls because you're crunching your time down. And like Ed said, your time is the asset here, so make sure that you get your hands on a good dialing system. There's many of them out there. Get yourself on a good dialing system and use that in order to really leverage your time and your efforts, because without that, you know, you're really not going to get the results you're looking for. So definitely goes a long way. And we just talked about door knocking. Now, there is no shame in door knocking, but there's a good strategy behind door knocking. Ed, can you share one of your strategies with us about door knocking, and I'll give you some of my examples?
The way I've typically door knocked is more of that abandoned home idea. So I've driven and seen abandoned home, trying to see if somebody homes in a dilapidated area. But my strategy with door knocking is it kind of gets mixed in with the phone calls and the mailings. So I might call them first if I get some interest. Maybe they haven't answered my phone, I'll go door knock. It's just a way that I'll try to build rapport with them.
Absolutely.
And then personally, while we're on, my personal strategy is I'm gonna make a few phone calls. If I get, maybe I've been on the phone with them once or twice, I'll randomly show up, try to get them in person. But I'm also mailing them. I don't mail everybody. I don't mail blast. I definitely don't ever do that. I don't send 3,000 mails. But like you said, if I got 20 people that I've been in touch with, I might just send them a handwritten letter, just letting them know I'm here and I'm interested and I'm here for them when they're ready to
100%.
take the step.
Yeah, so I was going to mention the same thing, Ed. Once you have made a ton of phone calls or a ton of mailings, and you have someone that's on the fence, and you have someone who's giving you an inclination that, yeah, I'm ready, but then they kind of went cold on you along the way, because you have to follow up. You know, you're not just going to get short sales by picking up the phone one time and then just saying, oh, man, good thing I called for an hour. I got 3 short sales. No, you're going to have to call continuously. You're going to have to do this for at least a month before you start seeing any results, because you suck on the phone. You've never been on the phone. Your job has never been to convince someone to sell their home over the phone ever in your life. So you're going to get better at talking to people. You're going to get better at tweaking your language and your verbiage, because people are going to start to react differently to things you say. And every time, believe it or not, you're learning through experience that you get better results when you say these phrases as opposed to those phrases. So in 30 days' time, you start to kind of gravitate more to that type of conversation, and you get better results. So you get better with time, guys. So don't think it's going to be a quick effort where you're going to do it for a day or two or a week and you're going to be good to go. It's not going to work at all. So the other option that I wanted to give you guys is that obviously you're going to go and follow up with people who are hot, obviously, but they cool down along the way. But you also want to try to target homes that you know might actually still have equity. So what you can do is, just because they're foreclosing, just because they're list pendants, doesn't mean that they're underwater. Think about this. Let's just say the person took out a $100,000 loan, only had $100,000 left, but something happened in their life where they could stop making payments. But their home is still worth $300,000. So what that means is that you can approach that person, and they might need to sell, and you won't even have to do a short sale. You can just do a regular sale because they have $200,000 in equity. That person might say, you know what, just give me $200,000 and it's yours. Person walks away with $200,000. You have $100,000 left in equity. You throw $20,000 or $30,000 in it to repair it, and then you make maybe $50,000 after expenses. So there's a way that you can do that, guys. And the way you do that is by downloading all the upset amounts, and then you can use Zillow for this. We have other systems that we use for it. You just copy and paste the address into Zillow, and Zillow will give you a Zestimate. So if the upset amount or the unpaid amount is 100 and the Zestimate comes out for 300, you got a winner. You highlight that one in red, and then you go and door knock that one.
Specifically.
Yeah, specifically go after that one. So a lot of ways that you guys can go ahead and maximize your door knocking abilities, which is good.
And at the same time, just for me when you door knock, maybe instead of sending an actual mailer, maybe you door knock and they're not home, and you leave a handwritten letter.
Sure.
So it's a little bit more personable than just somebody.
Yeah, don't show up empty-handed.
You might mail something handwritten. Yeah, that's cool. That helps. But having something to give them is also very helpful. I've heard somebody say that they don't door knock without a letter and a business card.
Letter, a business card, a quick resume about yourself.
Just to try to give them something.
Something.
Credibility you want to build.
Yeah, because they're going to look at you sometimes as the guy who's trying to steal their house.
Yep.
So be wary of that. Put yourself in their position for a sec. All right, so now we're going to talk about the steps in a short sale. What steps you have to take in order to make sure your short sale process works appropriately. So step number 1, obviously, the bank will not look at a short sale. They will not process a short sale unless it's being marketed correctly. And that means it needs to be listed with a real estate agent. some of you guys or most of you guys that are watching this are not real estate agents, and we don't expect you to go out and get your license. You could if you wanted to. Obviously, we're always hiring here at Culture Estate, so that's something that if you want to do, that's fine. But what you're going to have to do is team up with a real estate agent and give them the listing, because it's going to have to be on the market in order for the bank to approve it. So you're going to have to send the bank a listing agreement signed by all parties, and the bank will have to make sure that that's one of the requirements in their package. So once it's listed with the agent can then give you the ability to write up an offer on the home. So you write up your offer and you submit it to the seller. So you submit your offer to the seller. The seller then has to agree and has to sign off on a contract. Even though sometimes people get confused and they think that the bank is the only one that has to approve the sale. That's actually not true. The seller still has to sign off on the offer before it's sent to the bank. So that has to be done first. Once that's done, and the seller and the buyer have already come to terms, then it's the buyer's responsibility at that point. Remember this. At that point, it's your responsibility as the buyer to inspect the home and also to run title. Two reasons, big reasons why, is because remember, you're buying an as-is home. You don't want to do a home inspection 6 months from now when the home gets approved, because you might spend the next 6 months waiting for a home that has an underground oil tank that nobody refuses to clean up, maybe has a lot of issues structurally that you're going to spend way more money than what you offered on. So you got to make sure you inspect it in the beginning. All you real estate agents who are watching this, if you're processing a short sale for a buyer, make sure that they're always doing their home inspection up front, not after the short sale has been approved. Most attorneys will try to change that so the inspection is done after the short sale process, but that's a waste of time for everyone, especially the agents.
Attorney, you're talking about the seller's attorney?
Buyer and seller's attorney. Well, the buyer's attorney is going to push for that. Seller's attorney may not really care, because the buyer has to spend the money up front.
Right, they don't want them to spend wasted money.
They don't want to spend $500 on a home inspection. They'd rather waste everyone else's time for 6 months. So you don't want that. You want to make sure, listing agents out there, you want to make sure that if you take a short sale, if you accept a buyer on a short sale, accept an agent's offer, make sure they do their home inspection right up front. Next thing is you also want to run title up front. Most attorneys for the buyers are going to do the same thing, say we don't want to run title until after the short sale is approved. Dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. If an attorney ever says that, they have no idea how to do short sales. The reason why is because you're offering $200,000 on a home, and you may think the only thing that's against that home is that mortgage, but then you're going to find out that there's tax liens. You're going to find out that there's a student loan that was attached to the home, that there was IRS lien, like all these things that you had no idea were there, but you find out 2 weeks before the closing. Like, that's the dumbest thing that I could ever think of in my life. Now you got to start the short sale basically all over again, because you have to submit a whole new package to the bank showing them what they're going to net after you pay off all these other debts. So home inspection, title, as soon as you get the offer accepted by the seller. Okay, you may lose a couple bucks, but guess what, guys? Your time is more valuable than the loss of a couple $100. And if you have a good title company, they're not going to charge you for a title search. It's a very minimal cost.
But as mentioned earlier, some of these deals can be a little bit more meatier, so it's worth it to lose a few bucks on 1 or 2 deals to catch that bigger deal.
You spend $2,000 in losses, but you make 50 or 100 on another deal. So it's just part of the business. Okay. Next thing you're going to have to do at that point is you're going to have to send your offer. You're going to have to send all the income docs for the seller and the RMA. The RMA is the acronym for Request for Mortgage Assistance. You have to send all that to the bank in order for you guys to get the process started. The reason why you have to do this is because the bank wants to qualify the seller in reverse. So the reason I say that is because when they buy the home, they have to qualify with their income docs to prove that they can afford the home. Now they have to send their income docs to prove that they can afford the home. Okay? So that's the reason why you have to do that. The request for mortgage assistance is basically their income and expense sheet is what they call it. They call it an RMA. So, along with the RMA, they're going to have included in there a 4506T, which is a document that allows the bank to verify that the tax returns that are being submitted to them are the same tax returns that were submitted to the IRS and have been approved by the IRS. So make sure you get that ahead of time. You don't want to chase people around for income docs or RMAs or anything, or authorization forms or any of that afterwards, because like I said, the less you have to meet with a seller, the more chances you have of the deal going smoothly, because they can change their mind at any time. Next, the bank's going to review your docs they're going to send out an appraisal or a BPO or both. So Fannie Mae is one of those mortgage lien holders that sends out both an appraisal and a BPO. And I don't know why they do that, because the BPO always comes out less than the appraisal, but they always go with the appraisal. So to me, I'm thinking, why do you even send out both? So what I try to do is I try to schedule both for the same day. That way I don't have to go out to the house twice. It's hard enough to get in there once, so just basically do that. And like I said, be there, make sure you meet them, and you give them all the data that they're going to need.
Does the bank pay for this?
The bank pays for all the appraisal and the BPO, so there's no cost associated to this that's going to be applied to the seller at all.
Awesome.
Okay, the bank will accept. Then the bank will either accept, counter, or decline the initial offer, because the bank doesn't know what the home is worth. They're sending out the appraiser to give them the information, the feedback that they need in order to make that decision. So once they have it, the bank will either accept it, counter it, or decline it altogether if they feel it's too low. Okay, so then afterwards, the buyer at that point may choose to accept the counter offer, counter it once again, or dispute, like I mentioned earlier, you still have the ability to dispute it, or decline the offer altogether. So I don't know why somebody would want to decline it unless they tried to dispute it first and it didn't work, and then they can decline it, but it depends on the buyer's interest in the property too.
So is it at this point you have, so earlier we had talked about you do an inspection, maybe you find out that there's an oil tank.
Mm-hmm.
Are you disputing that now?
Well, you would dispute.
Or you presented that when you submitted your offer to the bank back here a couple steps prior.
Yeah, well, you can dispute it at either point, because if you do your due diligence early, you can rescind that offer and send a new one.
Okay.
Or if you took longer, and sometimes people do wait till they get further into the process to do like an oil tank sweep, you can dispute it at that point as well. You can dispute it any time up until you're closing on this property if you find out something last minute too. But you're gonna have to probably start over again. So
Okay.
this is obviously the stuff that you want to get done early on. I know those guys that are probably going to watch this who have probably done short sales before, and they have different experiences. And guys, no two short sales are ever the same. So just because your short sale might have went differently on one occasion or another occasion, doesn't mean that everyone that we do or you're going to do is always going to be likely to come out the same. But you should always have your ducks in a row. You should always start off early and do everything up front. Okay, so once the buyer obviously accepts the offer or counter, whatever it is, if they accept and both parties have come to an agreement, the bank will issue an approval letter with a closing date. Now that's really important, because it seems that people don't understand that banks are not like typical people. If you prolong your closing with a regular seller, you can probably get a bunch of extensions and you'll be fine. With a bank, they'll give you at most 1, maybe 2 extensions if they really feel that you're working your ass off to close it. After that, they'll probably make you start over again, okay? And during that time, your appraisal might expire, and they might make you do a new appraisal, and the value might come in different. So I've had appraisals that have expired, and they've come back 30 grand higher, and I've had to bite the bullet and I had to buy them. So, it just make sure you close your deals on time. Approval letter is going to state in the letter that they're going to be forgiving the seller, most likely forgiving the seller for the deficiency. So that's a really good thing, because the seller has it in writing. Now the seller can feel comfortable. You can sleep at night knowing that there's no debt that's going to be going after them, besides obviously the 1099 they're going to receive at the end of the year. Okay. Now, this is important, Ed, for you. Obviously, you're in the lending world, right? So at this point, the buyer moves forward with their financing or schedule to close. So how important is it to have your lender, your hard money lender, lined up for when you get the approval letter?
Very important, because as you said, you have a closing date and there's timing on this.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to really be delayed. So I always tell people even the same thing as kind of what's happening here with the buying process. As soon as you make an offer on a property and you get it accepted and you start working with the hard money lender, run title. Good
Mm-hmm.
news here is title's already ran.
Yep.
So you should be all set.
You just need an update.
The next thing you want to do is also get your appraisal ordered. So
Mm-hmm.
be prepared that as soon as you get your approval letter, have an appraisal ordered right away. So this way you can start working the appraisal with the hard money loan.
How long typically will it take you to get financing for someone for a short sale?
I mean, if title's already ordered, you can probably close within 5 to 10 days.
Mm-hmm. That's
But
pretty good.
If title's not ordered, we'll call it 10 to 15 days.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the things that I tell people, just as general knowledge for hard money, the things that slow deals up you are your own worst enemy. You are usually the delay, unfortunately, and then you have title and appraisal.
Yes, that you
So-
can always pass the blame to.
Exactly. So you'll be the delay and then blame the title company for not getting title done on time. So if you're prepared and you have all your documents ready and you can fill out the application right away and you have title basically just getting updated and you can get an appraisal out, you should be able to close the deal pretty quickly.
Nice. So if I'm looking for a loan, obviously I would visit the Hard Money Project. On there I can submit the details of my loan, my short sale, outline how fast I need to close, and then what happens is the Hard Money Project will then fish out the best deal for me, right? I'll get the options of like a bunch of lenders, and then I can see what the rates are and when they can close.
Exactly. So when you fill out an application for each deal, there is a section for you to say, a little bit specific about your property. So you may mention that it's a short sale just so the lenders know, so they know that they need to make sure that they're on their game as well.
Punctual.
But there's also a section that says that, when it needs to close by. There is a date section in there. So make sure you let us know what that is, so that way the lender, again, has time. And then, like Lewis said, there'll be a couple offers for it, and we'll work with you guys to help choose the best if you need some help.
Nice. And then we submit the final HUD to the bank 48 hours prior to closing. This is important, guys, because you cannot close a transaction. A short sale is not like your regular closing. You can't close it without the bank giving you their final permission by reviewing the final HUD 1 or closing disclosure, whatever you call it in your state. They have to review that, and then they'll give you the green light to close. They'll approve the HUD, and that means that no more changes can be done to that HUD after they've seen it for the last time. So if you guys have never done a short sale before, if you have somebody helping you on it, an admin or something, make sure they understand this. If you'd like, you can also have them contact us or take our training that we're going to talk to you guys about very shortly, where they're going to find out all the details on how to work a short sale from step 1 to the very end.
This is an important thing here with the hard money, is that a lot of times the lender for the hard money company might not approve a HUD until like the day of or the morning of. So that can be a late timing here. So make sure you have that and you've gotten your lender to approve it as well, just so that there's no issues.
Absolutely. So then we get ready to close, guys. That's when we start making the money. Closing day, absolutely. So there's a wise man once said, you don't make your money when you sell a property, you make your money when you buy it. So this is going to be a festive day for you guys. Make sure that you've got your contractors ready. I would even get the permits started while you're waiting for the short sale to go through if you're going to be doing renovations, heavy renovations. But it's definitely, there's a lot of moving parts. And like I mentioned before, Ed and I have created a step-by-step training series on how to become a real estate investor. We go and take a real deep dive into short sales, sheriff sales, foreclosures, just about every type of deal you can get out there. Not only what they are, but also the nitty-gritty, how to actually dispute a transaction, how to get your hands on properties that nobody will ever know about, and you can kind of like pretty much bring up to the surface. So a lot of things that have a lot of value, and then not only that apply here in New Jersey, but apply for pretty much anywhere in the state, in the country. So look for that. That's going to be on our site, Hard Money Project /training, I believe, hardmoneyproject.com.
/training, yes.
Yeah, so check that out. We also have a series of webinars that we are delivering to you guys every single month towards the last week of the month. So every month we look forward to those. Those are completely free for you guys to watch whenever you have the opportunity. They're filled with a lot of good information. On our site, we also have the previous 2 that we created on the last 2 months. You can just go ahead and visit, what is that, Hard Money Project.
It's on the same page. It's on
/webinar.
it's actually on /training. It's on that page as well.
Oh, it's there too?
So from that training page, if you click on the training button on there, it'll take you directly to our training platform.
Long story short, go to hardmoneyproject.com.
Exactly.
That's pretty much it. But I think we have a few other questions. Ed, do we have some?
Yes, we do. So the question is, where can you download those judgment amounts that we're checking against the Zestimate that you had talked about?
Okay, good question. So the judgment amounts, for the most part, you're going to be able to find in a couple of different places. Auction.com has been a really great resource for a lot of investors. You'll be able to find a lot of the information there. As long as the property has been scheduled for sheriff sale, you'll find the information there. If you're going for list pendants, I've yet to see list pendants filed through my aggregate source with the upset amount on there. The only time I tend to see the amount is when it's scheduled for sheriff sale.
Right.
because I feel like that's when they have already the aggregated amount or the total amount that they're going to owe with back tax, with back fees and legal fees and all these other things that have been paid for by the bank. So what I would do is just cast a wide net, go for the short sales in general, but then if you want to target the ones with high equity, you're most likely going to have to wait till those properties are scheduled for sheriff's sale, because that's when you're going to see the amount publicized. Before then, I depends on what state. Look, I'm an expert in New Jersey, but if there's another state where they disclose that information early on, then you might get the information there. Now, if you really want to do the research and go a little bit further and peel the onion back a little bit, you can look, because when they got that mortgage, it was recorded how much the mortgage was for. So let's just say they got a mortgage for $300,000 in 2015, and it's 2019. Chances are they paid that mortgage down very little. So they're probably gonna owe maybe $280, $270 on that mortgage. So that should give you an idea, of what they owe on it. So that's a little bit of a way of doing it. But I apologize, but that's the only way you're going to be able to do it, I think.
Yeah, it's just a little bit more legwork, really,
Yeah.
if there's no general source for that area.
What else
So
you
that's
got?
it.
That was it?
That's what we got, yep.
Wow. Okay, so like I said earlier, if you guys are looking for a mentor or you need training, visit thehardmoneyproject.com/training. We also have new content every month, which we spoke about, guys. On this training portal, you'll be maximizing your exposure to all the things you need to know about in real estate as far as investing goes. We are consistently updating the site every month with new content, consistently new content, not only sitting here in the studio, but we're also taking you guys on the field and showing you actual properties that we're working on, showing you how to dispute a short sale, showing you how to do the homework for a sheriff's sale, how to look at a home from the outside and be able to determine whether it's a good deal or not. So a lot of value, guys, that you guys can add to your knowledge base. And you can be anywhere, guys. You guys can be in Montana, you guys can be in Texas, and you guys watching this, and it's going to apply to your state, because at the end of the day, real estate is pretty much a universal thing across the country. So check us out. We definitely giving you a lot bang for your buck. And we're also have putting together a mastermind community. So we're looking to put together more people to join our training portal. And then once we have a certain amount of people, we're going to start a mastermind, which is going to meet every so often, so we can trade ideas and we can also grow from each other's experiences, and we can just ask questions that need to be answered. I know some of you guys, you feel kind of bad asking people that have been working in your circle about real estate, because you feel, sometimes people feel like you're taking something away from them. Hey, but guys, we're an open book. Anything you guys need to know, whatever question you guys ask, we're here to answer it. And once we start our mastermind community, you guys have full access to that community 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
And the great thing about that community is if you have the question, somebody else has the question as well.
Oh, yeah.
So, it'll be a great place to put it up there, and, you'll learn and everybody will learn as well at the same time.
Absolutely. So if you guys, and lastly, if you guys are looking for any financing for any of your transactions, if you guys are looking for money for your hard money deals, even if you're looking for a bridge loan or if you're looking for a business line of credit, you can visit thehardmoneyproject.com and submit the details to your loan, and we will not only get you the best terms, but we'll get you multiple bids for you guys to be able to see what's out there and what is the best rate that's available for you.
Yep. And
and it costs you nothing. So it's a win-win for everyone, guys. So anything else, Ed?
that's it. I think we covered it all.
Good. If you guys are watching us on anywhere other than Zoom, this is being rebroadcasted on Facebook and YouTube. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, share, notifications, all that good stuff. And if you think it added a lot of value, just make sure you tell your friends about it as well. Thank you guys for watching.
Thank you.
Have a good one.